Okay, so you all know me now. I'm just going to ask my friend to introduce herself.
Oh, hello, friend. My name's Kath Kitchen. I'm the head teacher at Hospital and Outreach Education.
Right. Hopefully, you all printed off this massive tome. Apologies for your printer ink. We are never expecting you to read the whole thing, okay? What we tried to do was put a toolkit together that could be used by any agency, any person, and there is different chapters that are relevant to different people. So, what we're going to do is familiarise you with this toolkit, and then we're going to have a go at you filling out a CSE assessment, okay? This is really important because you need to do the work. We've been talking at you all morning and we need now you to do some work. Then we are going to ask you to plan for the future. On every table there is an action plan. We need you to complete the action plan, which will be part of this session. Leave it on the table, don't take it with you, because we will want to collate them and then we will email them back out to you. And then in a few months' time, we will make contact with you and say, what's happened to your action plan? I don't want this to be one of those conferences that people sit, watch, stick in a drawer and forget about. Okay, so it's really, really important. Can I ask you to click, Kath, for me?
No.
Thank you. Okay. The National Working Group, through Dr. Kirtley, did a brilliant piece of work with health professionals, asking health professionals what do they know about child sexual exploitation, which actually was very little, okay, which was a worry. But what he called his work was shine a light. And he said, if you shine a light, you will probably find it. And what we're finding more and more across the country is those lights have become massive big beacons, haven't they? And we're hearing about the Rochdales, the Rotherhams, Cambridge, Oxford. It goes on and on. So we're going to talk you through each chapter. So if you get your toolkits out, this is a time to have a real good shufty through, okay? Your first chapter is what is CSE, and what we're saying to you is everyone should read chapter 1 and 2, and then you'll find that there's boxes at the ends of the other chapters that direct you to other bits of the resource. So all the things that Julie from Bernardo's talked about is in there, all the things that Rise have talked about. In that first section, what is CSE? Push-pull factors, the law, risk factors, health risk factors, the fact that lots of young people self-harm. I have so many young people who come through NGH who are repeatedly self-harming, and we need to unpick if that is linked, and we are seeing it is linked quite often. So that's your first chapter. Your second chapter is the local response, and that has your CSE assessment in it. But it also tells you what the local team are doing, which you've already heard. Now, to find the assessment, you would go to the NSCB website, and there's a very quick link on the front page of the website that has the banner. If you see something, say something, and you click it, and it should take you through to the assessment. We really must emphasise that we are asking you to complete an assessment prior to referring into social services. So your assessment will be attached to your referral. That's really, really important. But we've also recognised, particularly within health areas, say like accident and emergency, we don't have that many minutes with them. We're only with them a very short amount of time. So there is a short assessment for the health sector, okay? The idea being that they complete the short assessment and then that is flagged with their relevant safeguarding teams who then can go on to complete a fuller assessment or support the workers to complete a fuller assessment. Okay. In chapter 3, I'm going to ask my friend to talk about.
Chapter 3 is education, and when we were first asked to do this, Julie asked me to write lesson plans, and those of you that teachers know that it's our favourite job to do. But when we started to look, actually, there are some wonderful resources already out there, and I really don't believe in reinventing the wheel. In the education chapter, you will find a policy for your school on CSE. There's a primary one and a secondary one. You have to make the decision, does that go into my safeguarding policy or is that standalone? There are resources in there right from early years. Early years, I hear you say? Yes, early years. It's as important in early years to start building young people's self-confidence and self-esteem. You will find a suggested list of books there and some questions that you can use while you're doing that at story time. There are primary resources and secondary resources on there. We're not recommending them and saying one is better than the other. And for me personally, I've taken a little bit from all sorts of different resources in order to build my scheme of work. So they are there for you, but they require investigating.
Thanks, Kath. Chapter 4 is the health chapter, and we were very aware that different health roles will have different types of contact with young people. So you'll see that we've used this think vulnerability bubble. We've got various different little case studies in there. We've got the paramedic case study, where the paramedic turns up to pick up a young person who is found unconscious on the side of the road. Now, their duty of care is to get that young person treated, but we want them to look up and look around. Where have they found this young person? In this case example, they found that young person near some terraced houses, a few hundred metres away from a youth club, which is very key to think about this, the context in which they were found. There were a number of young people milling around, and there were some adults on the periphery. The young person did not want to say, or tell, their mother or their father what was going on. So think about those vulnerabilities. There are so many vulnerabilities in there. I'm not going to give you the answers because that may be one of the cases you want to use in a minute. We also talked about with A&E. In A&E, young people will come in often for emergency contraception. It's so important that the A&E practitioner does a little bit of investigation, asks about, yeah, you've come in for contraception, that's fantastic. I'm so pleased that you're thinking about looking after yourself. Just tell me why you think you need it. Now, there's something about talking to teenagers. If you say to them, well, what happened? They won't tell you, we know that. But if we do the round the houses sort of way of discussing it, we might get a little bit more information, which will allow us then to suggest to them that we're a bit worried about you. Would you mind if we went through a few questions with you? The other key message that we give to health staff when they are seeing young people is who is bringing this young person to our department. That is so important. And I really take on board today, and something I will really put back into our training, is that 17-year-old lad may be the perpetrator. Yeah? We may see him as her boyfriend. But what about the young man who comes in, and there's another example of a young man who is worried about his sexuality, has had his first gay relationship. He hasn't told his parents. It is very hard for young people to come out when they are gay. But add into the mix that he has a learning difficulty. How vulnerable is he? And I think this is the thing, is that we don't realise how many young men are at risk. We need to reinforce that message. So that's what the health chapter does. It goes through lots of different scenarios to get the health workers thinking. Chapter 5 is the social services chapter, and it just gives key messages to social workers to think CSE. Whenever they're doing an assessment, whatever team they're in, they may be in the adult social work team. They may have done a visit to a home with a vulnerable grandma who's got dementia, and then they realise that there is 3 generations in the household, and there's a very quiet teenager sitting up the corner. Think what's going on for this teenager. What's it like in this household? How are things for this teenager? Is this teenager vulnerable? Now, we're not saying you're necessarily going to pick it up, but if you always have CSE in the back of your mind, you're likely to shine a light and have a look for it. Chapter 6 is councils and private businesses, and we need to thank the National Working Group because we've lifted a huge piece of work from them, which they allowed us to steal, which is very much aimed at the hospitality industry's hotels. A lot of our young people are taken to local hotels. I'm not going to name the hotels, but we know which ones we have difficulties with. We are actively working with the hoteliers to really get them to think about what's happening. We've put a very detailed case study in there for hoteliers to actually start thinking about who's coming into my hotel. Often perpetrators will pay with cash. Now, how many of us pay with cash these days? Yeah, I saw something on the news last night that cash is disappearing. If you don't pay with a credit card, you can't be tracked. So if you pay with cash, and who are these kids who are trucking up behind them as they walk down to the room? And why are there 6 more blokes who've just gone up to that room? Yeah? We need to get our hoteliers to start thinking, and we want to start rolling training out to them to get them thinking in this way. And our taxi drivers are particularly important. They are the eyes and ears. They really, really are. They will probably be picking up the same young person again and again. How many young people can really afford a taxi that often? They can't. So where's the money coming from for them to get these taxis? So think around there. And then for the sort of council groups and youth groups and what have you, we've put some work in there about thinking about policies. How do you keep children safe on your premises? You have a duty of care. Because if we find sexual exploitation is taking part on your premises, then I'm afraid Rich is probably going to come and visit you with some of his colleagues. So how are you going to keep your area safe? By getting some policies and procedures in there, by really thinking actively about who comes to my particular premises. And that's in chapter 7. Chapter 8 it's not a big section for parents and children because I do think we need to do a similar toolkit for parents and children. This was mainly aimed at frontline workers, but we have put in some key information for parents. And one of the key messages we want to get across is there's often a lot of parent blaming going on. The vast majority of parents do not know what is happening to their young person. They don't know. Some of them do, that's a different matter. That's safeguarding on another level. But the vast majority of parents don't know. And it is very easy for us to start being very judgmental about those parents. The parents are victims too. My God, if you found out your son or daughter was being sexually abused on a daily basis, how the hell would you feel? You would be devastated, you would blame yourself, you wouldn't know what to do. And actually parents are our key resource in keeping young people safe. So strengthening up the parents and supporting them is vital. And I would like to see all the schools here start thinking about how can you put an evening on, can you put a session on, can you put some posters up to encourage parents to ask questions about keeping their kids safe. And then to the final chapter, chapter 9, information for young people. We've used the Kingfisher model. Very, remind me where Kingfisher is, Ali? Oxford. Oxford had a huge investigation. Kingfisher is a brilliant resource. So we've actually, with their permission, lifted all their stuff. Why reinvent the wheel again? And again, it has a little bit in there which is called, "We are really worried about you." And what we would say to you as practitioners is that you can use that section to help you think about how you're going to talk to this young person to introduce the subject of, "We are really worried about you." Okay. And then at the back there's some appendices, but all of the chapters will be split out and will be placed on Ask Norman website and on the Northamptonshire Safeguarding Children's Board website. You will be able to download your specific chapters, you will be able to download the policy for school. We have a home internet agreement that you can download that parents can use with their children. If that was just sent out in a pack to every parent in your school, that would be fantastic. So I think it may be yourself.
You forgot to mention chapter 7.
What was in chapter 7?
Volunteering
I did touch
community.
on it.
Okay, that's
yeah,
fine. Then.
So
That's
we won't
all
worry too much.
Right,
Okay.
time for you to do some work now. on your tables, you have some case studies. Okay? So what we would like you to do now, you know what's in the toolkit. Start thinking about how you're going to use your toolkit. Thinking about the vulnerabilities, and you already did some of this thinking process with your Bernardo's presentation. Have a look. Think about the vulnerabilities. You've got paper on your tables, and start to use the assessment tools. There are copies of the assessment tools on the tables as well. We would ask you to work together, because actually the discussions you have with your multi-agency colleagues around the table are as valuable as anything else that you will do. Think about, how much information have I got here? Ali talked about only having a little bit of information. The person in A&E who's only got a little bit of information. Who else do I need to ask? Who else do I need to consult? I think what came through to me reading the recent Safeguarding Children newsletter was that word professional curiosity. So when we see something and somebody gives us an explanation, instead of going, oh yeah, that's fine, thinking these vulnerabilities all the time and maintaining that professional curiosity. So you've got 10 minutes to have a little chat about those and to start using your toolkit and your assessment tool. This last piece from us is, for me, the most important part of the conference. Sorry, Julie, will you do the prodder for me? What are you going to do now? We've sat here, we've had some fantastic speakers, we're all inspired, but for some of us in schools, for example, it's half term. What I don't want to happen, and what nobody in the group wants to happen, is you to go back wherever you're going to, put the toolkit on the shelf, and that's it, forget about it. What are you going to do? How are you going to take this message back? How are you going to make a difference for the children and young people in Northamptonshire? Because it's not just Oxford or Peterborough or all of those other places, it's here in Northamptonshire. And we have a real opportunity to make a difference for the children and young people who live here. On your tables, as Julie said, is your action plan. Please start filling in your action plan now. We want to know what you are doing. And when you've got some actions, there's a big white sheet outside the door there. Write down what you're going to do. Post your post-its on our boards, and let's share together.